think it's one of the massive challenges and opportunities that's right now for us in the market, getting that stronger alignment. It's about trying to get the buying signals, so identifying various buyers. And then the hot topic is about, within that buying group, who are showing the signals. And then it's like saying, okay, fine, let's not disregard everybody else, but let's go after those three areas and those three people that have shown some element of interest. So my view is that you're widening the net initially to just see what's the lie of the land, what's happening out there, who's showing some interest.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to the latest in the award-winning OnBase podcast series. I'm your host, Paul Gibson, and as you know, we always look for hot topics to discuss, and today is definitely not an exception to that. I'm excited. Today I'm talking with Graham Reed. He's Director of Business Creation at Ice Blue Sky, and he's with us today to discuss what I think is a really relevant topic now, redefining buying groups in the age of AI. I think, Graham, you've ticked two of the biggest topics I talk about day in, day out. So welcome to the show, and I'm looking forward to getting into this with you.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Thanks for inviting me on. And yeah, you're right. I think that's how we sort of initially picked up. I saw you were talking a lot about buying groups within Demandbase, and hence sort of our now association. So yeah, looking forward to getting into it today and sort of just sharing views and opinions.
Yeah, it should be a good one. So, but before we get into the topic of today's podcast, I like to start with, I suppose, a simple question. Can you tell us a little bit about Ice Blue Sky? Walk us through your journey to where you are today, and what particularly led you into the world of B2B buying groups?
Yeah, thank you. Let me start with Ice Blue Sky. I've been a director now of Ice Blue Sky for about 5 years. Prior to that, all my experience was in print marketing. And so subsequently, I came late to the table with B2B marketing. But it's one of those things, Paul, where you look back and you think, God, I wish I'd done this all my career, if you know what I mean. But we're a specialist strategy, account-based marketing, lead demand generation agency, working very much within the tech sector. And also as well, we do a lot of partner marketing as well. So working within channel. To the layman, to people who don't understand the nuances around account-based marketing, lead demand generation, things like that, I sometimes say to them, I said, we're like the SAS of marketing. So that sort of conjures up all those different thoughts, doesn't it, in your mind when you think that? Really elite in what we do, really specialist, very tactical, very specific. So it's not just about doing blanket B2B marketing campaigns. It's very, very targeted. So obviously strategy, messaging, data. And then we use all those channels that we love to deploy in how do we blend all that together in relation to how do we get our clients noticed and create that opportunity of what we call early stage sales engagement. So yeah, that's just a little bit about us, really.
Yeah, awesome. No, it's really good. So obviously an interesting background there, but was there any personal experience or moments that you've had during that time that shaped your view that one buyer isn't enough to win a deal? And you, as you know, you're speaking to the converted or preaching to the converted at this way.
Absolutely. I think if we look at the nuances of account-based marketing, so what are we doing there? So we're marketing to accounts. So whether it's top of funnel, one to many, but never really did I ever feel that we were ever marketing just to one person, especially at that top of funnel bit. So what you're trying to do with, you're trying at that top of funnel bit, you're trying to get engagement and trying to understand where are those early sort of buying signals. I think in relation to where the realization about, it wasn't necessarily the realizations we should be not just marketed to one buyer, but it's what technology is now allowing us to do and what that's now enabling us to do, how we interact with those buying groups. So I think it's a progression of thinking, it's a maturity, whereas ABM is very much within that account. And obviously when you get down to the one to few, certainly down to the one to one, we are breaking those nuances of conversation, the relevancy of the content we create down to different targeted people. So, you know, you like to talk to C-suite and now we're now even starting to talk to MDs as MDs and FDs as FDs and CTOs as CTOs. So the distinction of is with all this breakthrough with AI, although we were already doing a bit of that anyway, but it's accelerated it. So, and then also as well, I think Forrester have come out with some great stats telling us how many people are involved in the buying journey. So that's amplifying that, Paul, to basically say, right, okay, we've now got to bring this into our narrative, our understanding, and how does that really affect the strategy and the deployment of messaging that we undertake?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right. I think technology is enabling a lot of stuff we couldn't do before. We all agree, I think, in the B2B world that one buyer isn't sufficient, but also the account-based approach that we've all taken for so long. The reason it's very broad and probably too broad, but the reason we've had to do that is because the technology wasn't able to identify that buying group. And if it was, it wasn't able to identify what that buying group is actually doing now. How should I engage with them? Do they know our brand? Are we nurturing them? Are we giving it to sales to chase after? So I think that evolution has really come on leaps and bounds in the last year, 18 months. And now I think buying groups is not just something people agree with, it's something they can actually do properly now.
Yes.
And I suppose on that approach, AI, which is the big talking point now, has started to really get involved in that. So what do you think the role AI has in that transformation we're seeing?
Well, I think it's a couple of points there, and you touched on one. One is the identification of buying groups. So typically AI enables us or gives us a head start in looking at what the service proposition is that you're trying to put into a target account. And then the probability of the people within that organization in relation to who would be the specific departments, or at that point, we don't know who those people are. And then obviously then it's about then how do we then use technology to go and find those people against those titles. So number one, AI is assisting us with that. And then we have some great data tools that we can use, Cognism, Apollo, people like that. A little bit of Zoom info maybe, but those applications where you can enhance your data, and then you start to map that out. So first of all, AI is helping us with that. Secondly, AI in relation to the curation of content. So the curation of content at a buyer level. So understanding we have a core pillar of service proposition, but what does that look like to an MD? And what does that look like to an MD and his particular pain points, or CEO? Same for the CTO, the CFO. And then we go down another layer into the operational infrastructure, and then maybe even then down into what we would call the influencer level. So people that might be undertaking research and things like that. So AI enables us to create a core pillar of proposition and then curate that content to those people. And I think that's the most exciting thing, Paul. It's relevancy. AI has given us relevancy of information and how we talk to each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And you picked up on a point that's quite an old discussion now, but I always think is quite relevant. Look, often when you're doing persona-based marketing, you say, right, I want to go after the CMO. And that's brilliant if the CMO is out there looking for stuff and they're showing buying signals. But the reality is CMOs don't do that. They say to some of their underlings, who we call them, go out and find me the 3 best solutions that do X, Y, and Z, and then we'll shortlist it and go from there. If you're sat there waiting for the CMO to make those signals, you're never going to get anywhere. No. So that is a really good point to say those influencers and those researchers, it's just as important. If they're in the right business and they're showing the right signals, we must engage with those people as well.
Yeah, I always say, Paul, I always have this sort of halcyon view that at some point, all those people might be in the same room. And if they're all in the same room talking about a common problem, say, for instance, if it was Demandbase, for instance, and the services you supply, it's about they're in the same room. It doesn't matter whether they're making that decision, but they've all been touched and they've all been shown relevance in relation to the pain points within their business. And I think that's where we are right now in that world of real strategic targeted marketing. We're in that world where we can talk to those people, and we like to think that commonality within the nurture as such is all assisted by what AI can give us.
Yeah, absolutely. So go to the heart of the topic, if you like, from your perspective, why is focusing on the entire buyer group, not just the 1 or 2 decision makers, so critical to winning, these modern B2B deals? You sort of touched on it already, but good to expand on.
Yeah. I think it's also about understanding who is active. So there's an old adage. I mean, I've been in more than enough sort of briefings and strategic meetings now to say with sales, and sales might say, "Oh yeah, I phoned that person, and they've qualified out." Right? Okay, so you've qualified out on one call to one buy. Yeah. Okay. All right. Fine. What about the 15 other people that might have a view and opinion slightly different to the one that you spoke about? So I think marketing and sales. So let's not talk about that because we spoke earlier about marketing and sales alignment. I think it's one of the massive challenges and opportunities that's right now for us in the market, getting that stronger alignment. But it's about trying to get the buying signals. So identifying various buyers. And then the hot topic is about within that buying group, who are showing the signals. And then it's like saying, okay, fine, let's not disregard everybody else, but let's go after those three areas and those three people that have shown some element of interest, whatever it might be. So my view is that you're widening the net initially to just see what's the lie of the land, what's happening out there, who's showing some interest. And then, as we all know, Paul, just in the nurture then of that, once we've got that as some intelligence, and what do we do next? So that's why I think it's so important to widen that, but also as well, when we're we are in a period of content overload, okay? So we've got to make sure that we're talking to those people in a very nuanced, very sort of individual way. So making sure we've got that content to really resonate and hit, but then trying to find the signals. So when the sales people, when it is weeks over the fence to say sales, yeah, they're ready, then they can have a more relevant conversation with people that are probably not qualifying out.
Yeah. And I think you've hit on, again, another conversation I have probably day in, day out at the moment, speaking to sales leaders that are losing a little bit of confidence in those signals that they're being thrown by marketing, even if it's a buyer group, right? Just because you've identified that Graham Reed is in that buying group, it doesn't mean to say he's in market. He's not shown any buying tools. He may not even know who the brand is. So you can't just say, hey, sales, go after Graham. You've got to really understand, what interest is he showing? How engaged is he? And we hear a lot of people saying, sales leaders saying, well, I get handies out to my salespeople. To your point, they phone up, there's no interest at all, and they just lose confidence in it. And so I think I think I said this to you before, I like the term AI with the why. If you can get someone saying, this is where this person is in this process at the moment, showing really good signals, but they've never engaged with our brand, never replied to an email, never come to our website. It's way too early for sales.
Definitely.
Let us get them understanding we're a company they should look at, should be working with. At that point, then I'll introduce sales. So I suppose, with your expertise, how can organizations nurture that trust from the beginning and get credibility across the group long before sales gets involved?
Yeah, really good question, because it's all around. We were talking earlier about the tools, isn't it, and the way that you work things. You're right about sending things into sales too soon. There has to be that element of qualification and nurture. So the people that are showing signals, we continue to nurture those people and everybody else as well, but specifically to those people. I think it comes down to what is your strategy. So we understand once we've mapped the buying group and once we've adapted the messaging, the core messaging, it's about then saying to sales, right, okay, give us, and this happens. So we do this as an agency. So give us access to your LinkedIn, Mr. Salesman. Okay. Or it might be one or two of them. Right. We're going to start sending out connection requests across this company. So we're using LinkedIn as a really direct way. And if we can get connection requests, and we see on average about 35% connection uptakes. So doing a very nurtured cadence of interactivity. So what we're trying to do there is we're trying to use that strategy for early stage, but latter stage as well. So there's an element of when the salesperson, and there's some credibility maybe between the salesperson and the target point. Okay. So already we're a first connection and we can use email. We can use that as a sort of a messaging mess. And then I think it's just about the deployment of that nurture. So we struggle with, email marketing is becoming more and more of a challenge in marketing nowadays. So, I don't know whether you run the Fixer AI application on your email. I do. And all my marketing emails go into a nice little marketing folder, and it doesn't get looked at as much as it should, really. Whereas beforehand, it used to be in my inbox and it used to be in that cadence of your daily emails that come in, goes flying off to that folder. So we've got a challenge there. How do we continue nurturing? So we've got to be using all the tools, tips and tricks, to keep relevant with those people. So that nurturing, what I said about the content, and making that specific. So it may not be necessary that you're doing that via email, that maybe you're using direct mail as an engagement piece. And we've had a lot of success with that because it's the physicality of it. You and I could have a whole new podcast with you on physicality of print and the engagement side of it, but it massively works when you've built up the right head of steam to get an interactivity. So if we're calling them to a workshop, for instance, or a face-to-face event or exhibition and things like that, that works really, really well at the same time. So hopefully that's I don't know whether I deviated in my answer there to your question, but hopefully it's
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, that's the point of this, right? You've got lots of expertise, so we're going off in different directions is what makes the podcast interesting. I think, from our perspective, direct mail is a massive increase. It's interesting because you get that whole privacy thing, right? Because still, the majority of people are working from home, and often if you want to send them a gift, they've got to give you a home address, which they don't like to do. But yeah, definitely there's, I think the old fashioned pick up the phone or send something is definitely for us probably the most successful route. An email they get too many emails. Most of it, as you say, just is directed straight into spam. So I think you and I obviously are agreed buying groups is something we should all be focused on. Other people we speak to agree as well. But what do you see the biggest misconceptions teams have about the buying group model?
Good question. I haven't hit too much opposition to this model so far because I think it's built on unquestionable logic.
Yeah.
If you are going to give organizations the ability to identify key prospects and talk to them in a way that's super relevant to them, why wouldn't they do it? I guess sometimes budget pool gets in the way because to do that, it's not excuse the term, spray and pray exercise. So it's not like necessarily content syndication where we're chucking information out there, trying to get it downloaded, and all of a sudden that's deemed to be an MQL. Yeah, really, that's that, and people think that's a sales signal. No. It's somebody's seen something they're half interested in and they downloaded it. So I think sometimes budget people misalign what's needed to be spent in talking to these people directly, as opposed to sort of what I call the more traditional ways of marketing. So I think that can be sometimes a bit of a challenge. But then when you start to look at the ROI figures in relation to buyer group marketing, Demandbase have got a great case study with Palo Alto in relation to using that in combination with other strategies. So, when you start talking about those sort of case studies, I come back to that term unquestionable logic. It's like, well, yeah. And selling them has become so much harder, as we know. So you've got to be deploying all the right tactics to sort of get that engagement.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I think from my perspective, I've probably had more buying group conversations with sales side of a business than marketing recently, because you can have a conversation with pretty much any sales leader or salesperson around, were you ever in that scenario where that deal was as good as done and then someone you'd never heard of came out of the woodwork and killed it dead? Yeah, that's why you need the buying group model, right? Because there's always people sales know, but there's always people sales don't. And if you're not able to engage and nurture them and give them the same messaging as you're giving to the people you're physically selling to, there's always that risk, right? And I think therefore sales are now going into the marketing side of the business and saying, hey, we need to focus on the buying group of this business. So actually, weirdly, it's sales in my expectations that we use to drive a lot of deals through the marketing, which is an interesting change. And going back to your sales and marketing alignment, right? If they're both doing the same thing, focusing on the same deals, guess what? The pipeline gets filled with better quality opportunities that sales can close and post-sales can renew.
Yeah, absolutely. The best campaigns we run, Paul, is when we got that sales and marketing in the one room, understanding the end-to-end strategy, especially in the latter stage deployment as well, when we're looking for sales to get involved in that interactivity. So yeah, I'm a big fan of it. I'm a perpetual salesperson as well, so I love getting involved with sales.
Exactly. Well, we use it day in, day out, right? I'm a Demandbase user as well as a Demandbase employee, so I see the big benefits of doing it. So, so AI. Everyone I talk to is talking about AI. Some of it's relevant, going back to your point earlier. A lot of it isn't. And so people are trying stuff and going, oh, yeah, sounded great, but it's not really good for us. So from what you've experienced now and what you see coming, how is AI changing the way, firstly, we identify, but then also understand and engage these multiple buyers we're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I can only talk, in relation to the development curve that we're on at Ice Blue Sky. And we've sat back and we've watched, so we didn't jump too soon. And we've also seen a lot of our clients get involved in AI. And it's interesting to see that we've had the hype and now we've got the reality. Some of the content that is being pushed out there is not necessarily getting the responses that people want. So as I said, we've got this massive problem right now of content overload. Okay. So from an AI perspective, we looked at that internally and said, right, we're not looking necessarily at AI mass content at all. And there are some people out there talking about that. Oh, we can do what we used to do for you for 25% of the price. Ridiculous, because, I think what this industry should be careful not to do is a race to the bottom. I still think that there's that real value of how do you curate that content, and we spoke about it earlier in relation to how valuable is that piece of content. So what we did is we've now got our own piece of software in relation to prompting. And one of the things that we're going to be talking about at the ABM conference, B2B Marketing ABM conference, is around the accuracy of how do you use AI and how do you prompt it correctly to get the right content blocks out to then say, right, what are we going to now do that? Are we putting that in an infographic? Are we putting that in a blog? Are we putting it in a report? Are we going to put some of that into an animation for engagement and things like that? So for us right now, we've been using AI, been focusing on that, which is working really well. And we spoke earlier about that central pillar and then obviously the outputs of the content for that. In relation to buying groups, again, we spoke about that earlier, where AI is assisting us in the mapping of that. But I'm not necessarily saying we accept all of that. So we give some of that to our junior researchers in Ice Blue Sky and say, look, this is a framework of a buying group or overlaying, or where in the world are these people sort of things, both from a sort of multi-language thing as well. And so, but we're then doing human research after that. And those two combinations of bringing all that together is greatly accelerating the value and the engagement levels that we're getting on our campaigns.
I'm sure all of our listeners are getting it and understanding the benefits of doing this. And if they're not already exploring buying groups and that sort of stuff, I think they will going forward. Are you able to share an example of, you don't have to mention any names, but how companies that you're working with have successfully expanded their reach beyond the primary contact, and then that's enabled them to win larger, more complex deals?
Yeah, I won't be specific, but I'll give you the structure of how it's worked. We talk about what is right with buying groups. Is it net new? Is AI going to assist us with that, or is it cross-sell and upsell? I want to write a blog actually soon to say, is the new net new cross-sell and upsell? Because so many businesses are engaged with clients that they could probably get 20 or 30% more business from, and it's easier to do that. So one business that we are working with on a campaign is cross-sell and upsell into existing accounts. So we've got that core existing buying group that basically exists, and the vendor has the relationship with that area. But there are several other areas that they're not transacting business with, and they could be transacting business with. And so subsequently, it's more easier to have the conversation with your existing client to say, look, we want to expand our network of what we do for you, and we'd like to talk to these areas of the business. And you've almost got that sort of, so you've got the human thing going on, people are going to talk to people and they're going to share information. So we've worked with one client where we're broadening that out, and with specific targeted content, landing pages, interactivity into those areas. And one account that we've gone live with, I think last week, we've got something like 68% engagement rate across those other buying groups, based on relevancy, based on how we design the imagery, and the association that they're already a core client of this vendor. So just by having all of that and just being a little bit more intelligent about that, we're starting to see really, really good levels of engagement.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting point, because I would say I think we did a survey, 58% of Demandbase clients use Demandbase for upsell, for growth, but also for retention.
Yeah.
Because as well as you can identify buying signals from a new prospect, you can also identify red flags if they're looking at the competition or they're disappointed in something. Well, actually, we can sell something that solves that. And so I think you're right. And I think buying groups is just as important for existing customers as it is for new prospects, but probably more so, right? Because as you say, it's really hard and really expensive to find a new prospect. If you've already gone through those steps and you've got a client, let's make sure we're getting as much as we can out of them and doing everything we can to support them to stick with us long term. So I think that's a really good point.
Absolutely. I always say to clients, you're going to spend a lot more rocket fuel getting off the pad on net new than you are cross-sell and upsell. And yeah, more and more people are looking at it.
Yeah. And for most companies, we're in a similar boat ourselves. if you don't get beyond year one with a client, you actually are losing money on that deal. So it's important to ensure you're getting as most and retaining them for as long as possible. So we'll have listeners on the call who probably still operate in that single buyer mindset. Oh, there's someone, I'm going after it. Oh, I didn't close it. I didn't know those other people were there. What would you say is the first step they should take towards adopting a buyer group based strategy or outlook?
Get in a room, map it out. Okay, get a whiteboard. Okay, get in a room, make it big. Get your sales team in, sales and marketing, all the people within your business. Get influence from as many people as possible, and get that framework, get that map put into place, like your blueprint. Okay, because then I think once you've identified what you think and where those people are from a visual context, you then have got a very good idea around, right, okay, these are the people. You know what I said earlier about we're the SAS of marketing? You imagine the SAS attacking a village or a building or whatever it might be. They'd map it out, wouldn't they? And I know we always think about we should be using AI and digital tools and stuff like this, just because people are saying, well, yeah, I dealt with a client and they had people in this area. And all of a sudden you've got this like spider diagram, mind map almost, of your buying group. So the first thing I would say, if you're looking to expand beyond just single buyer engagement, is get in a room, get a whiteboard, get some black coffee on, and thrash it out between your team.
Yeah, great advice. I definitely agree with that one. And we talked about alignment already on this podcast, and we talk about it all day, every day, really. But how do you think sales and marketing should collaborate more effectively when they're engaging with these multiple stakeholders?
You and I both know that once you go to a sales team and say, look, we're going to elevate the opportunity for you to get a conversation with a group of key accounts. When we do ideal customer profiling with sales, once you've sieved out all the big logos they think they'd like, but don't have any alignment to the core proposition, which is always a good exercise. So getting sales really excited about the possibility of them having good conversations or the possible conversations. That's the first thing for me. We get sales excited, but really marketing are the ones putting all the strategy together. So it's equally so then sales have to appreciate what marketing does. And I know marketing sometimes gets a bit of a bad rap, but they add real value to the process in saying, right, okay, now we know who those accounts are. Then we get in the room, then we put all the buying groups, and sales, as I said earlier, sales need to be involved with that. And the majority of the times, Paul, we find sales are really sort of engaged early on in the process. And as long as saying, oh, how's that campaign going? Or when's the next outreach? And so all of a sudden you've started to get that relationship between the sales and the marketing team. It's more collaborative. And then when marketing do their thing and you've got all the prospects and the targets and the messaging, then it's just about, as I said earlier, it's about making sure that when you're saying, right, we think this account is now ready for one-to-one sales engagement, holding them account to that. And I know this sounds funny, but we have what we call sales pods with some of our clients where they're almost accountable to us as the marketing agency. So we bring them in with the marketing team, right, okay, here we are. So we've got 5 accounts now that have now adopted or have now shown early stage sales or buying signals, and they're ready now for sales interactivity. So if they've taken it into a platform and they're using that, but also as well, keep marketing at the table. So we always say, Paul, marketing stay longer in the process, whereas beforehand they just used to throw leads over. No, marketing are right there, shoulder to shoulder, because if there's any nuances or things coming back in that early stage as they develop that sales conversation, is how can marketing support that? Almost like in deal marketing if it gets to that stage.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And although it's something that everyone always talks about and has talked about for a long time, that alignment is key with all of the customers that we work with. And I think one of the things we talk about is ensuring that all of the time, budget and resource from a sales and marketing perspective is focused only on those companies your business can and indeed wants to sell to, because everything else is a waste, right? And once you start getting into conversations, and again, maybe from a sales approach, our close rates are down, our churn rates are going up. It's normally because the deals they're going after and closing are the wrong ones. So once you can get them understanding that we're going to help you identify the companies you should focus on and the buying groups within that, and that is in hand with you and marketing, they're the ones you're going to go after and no one else. You're going to get a pipeline which is full of those companies, right? Yeah. And by the time marketing give them to you, the nurture's done, the trust's done, as we were talking about earlier. So guess what? Your close rates are going to go up. And because you're closing companies that are a good fit, you're going to give value better, and therefore they're going to renew more often. Would you like us to help you in marketing work in that way, it's a bit of a no-brainer, right? And I think that alignment then, but it's critical. If you've got one side or other disagreeing and going off on tangents, you're not going to get anywhere.
No, you can't have them pulling in separate directions. Definitely not.
Yeah. So we're sort of touching on, don't hand it over at the until it's the right time. We've got to get the brand awareness in there. Otherwise, sales are going to go after, well, I don't know who you are. Why would I talk to you? So are there any particular signals marketing should be looking for so they can understand who is it in that group, but more importantly, where are they in that buyer journey? And therefore, is this an awareness play? Is this a nurture? Is this hand it over to sales? What sort of signals should they be looking for?
Yeah, as you said, it all depends where they are in the journey. It's the old adage, isn't it? It's about who's opening emails. It's those signals, those forward signals. It's like who's downloading content, who's coming along and interacting to, if you're having events, for instance, if you're having round tables, who are the people in that? And so there's no other I'd love to think there was some other rocket science around there, Paul, to say that there's some combination of activity that's gonna say green light, go sales. I think it's also a gut feel as well, what might be happening in market. So if there's something happening for that target account, you can, and they're showing signals, you can relate what's going on in the market to the proposition or the value of what you have. So I think that's an interesting thing to use as a sort of an added engagement tool. And usually, as we said earlier, if you're sending something in like a really piece of interactive direct mail, you can weave in, and we've done this before, where you build a sentiment tool. So you can actually ask people to give themselves a profile in the buying journey. We did a bit of this in Channel for Cisco, and 10 weighted questions. Do you agree, neither disagree, or agree strongly? And then that can give you a bit of a profile of how the maturity or how the buyer is thinking. So you can use those little sort of things which assists marketing or sales in relation to whoever goes in first, or whether marketing are going to nurture that more. But I don't believe that there's anything out there beyond those combinations of signals that we're getting through those traditional engagement routes, unless you can tell me something that I don't even know about. So I'm here to learn.
No, but I think you've hit on something really important there. I mean, one person from a big organization, an HSBC, going on your website or opening up an email, that's not enough to be classed as a buying signal. Hey, go after it. But you'd be amazed how many of these black box solutions out there do exactly that. Because you don't know what the interaction is, you're just told, go after HSBC. You get all excited and go after it. I think this is going to sound like a shameless plug. I don't mean it like this, but one of the big things that I like about Demandbase is that it gives you the why behind everything. So there are 17 people from that company who looked at this particular white paper. 9 of them went to your website. They've shown interest here, but they've not engaged with sales. So it's way too early for sales. We want to do brand awareness. And I think if you're going to get buying signals, and if you're going to say, right, why do I go after that? And is that buying group in market right now? You need to have the insight to understand the why. So you know what messaging to use, you know what tactics to use. And I think there is a danger at the moment. There's a lot of black box technologies out there that are just simply saying, go after that, go after this, go after them. And the sales team are going off on wild goose chases. They're losing confidence in it. And that whole alignment, which we were just talking about how important it is, gets damaged because sales start going, not interested in hearing that anymore. I'm going to do my own thing. But I think it's an exciting time, but we've got to be careful. We're not just driving people off in the wrong direction because our black box AI says so. But lots more. We could cover that one off in a whole podcast for sure. So if we think about AI, and I think it is something that's taking over. If you think about mapping who is the buyer group, are there anything you're seeing from AI that's helping us predict the buying group, who they are, and what behavior we're likely to see?
I can't say that I'm using or we're using anything at this moment in time in a tool that's giving that. I mean, Humantic is quite an interesting application where it's given us very good insight into individual people. So once we've mapped the buying group and we've identified who those people are, that application, for instance, can help us just understand those nuances of different people, or things that they may have been put out in press releases, for instance, if they're big businesses. So, but nothing more than sort of, I haven't seen anything where they're giving me the names of absolutely everybody. So if I said, for instance, right, these are all the people that I want to talk to, and I put it into an AI engine and they go, right, all the departments or the buying groups. But these are all the people you need to talk to. And maybe that is out there and I'm not just using it yet. I mean, maybe some of the big data people have got that. But I think certainly that's where AI is going to drive that. And the greater intelligence we get, Paul, with buying groups, the more that's going to be out there in the ether and the more understanding of that's going to be. So in essence, mapping of buying groups for tech vendors and things like that is going to probably become a lot more simpler in the future. But I think we're still cutting our teeth on it a little bit.
Yeah. And I think, as with all these trends, there's a lot of people jumping on the buying group bandwagon, if you like, and saying, hey, I can identify those 30 people in that group. There you go.
Yeah.
Great. But are they in market? And all of that intent that goes behind it is often missing. So, yeah, I think AI is going to help us massively, right? And I've heard all these things like AI is going to kill sales jobs, or AI won't kill sales jobs, but the people using AI will kill the jobs of the people not, et cetera, et cetera. I think as long as the AI is relevant, I think it's something that will become very useful. And if it means that you don't have to manually go and do that time-consuming task anymore, AI will do it, which will free me up to do my creative stuff or my selling stuff or whatever. I think there's a huge opportunity there. I think we're all seeing some of these AI email things going out, and I'm sure you and I are not alone in thinking, yeah, that's AI driven. You can tell. And I think that humanity is we can't lose that.
No, not at all. And, at the end of the day, I mean, I like the Gartner chart where it says, where is the sweet spot of engagement in the sales process? Well, it's in that problem identification, solution exploration part of the chart. And what we're finding, as we all know, a lot of buyers do a lot more deep research. But if you can be that person, that problem identification, solution exploration expert at that point in the buying journey, you're not necessarily close the deal, but you're on that, you follow that curve round to then vendor consideration, vendor specification, and then pricing. But you're shoulder to shoulder with the buyer in the whole of that process, trying to shape that. And from an intent perspective, we all know that if you nurture that, you get better. It's statistically proven you get better outcomes to that. So, and that's human. If you need help, if you can be a human to human to say what problem you're trying to solve here, what's your issue, and we all know that that's the sweetest point of an engagement with anybody. If you could be seen to be, an overused term sometimes, that trusted advisor, almost helping people on that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So you sound like someone who consumes lots of content. Is there a particular book, a blog, podcast you'd recommend our listeners should check out?
Yeah. Well, we run an event every year called the B2B Marketing Symposium. And we were very privileged this year to have a gentleman by the name of Peter Docker come and talk at our event. And Peter has worked with Simon Sinek, not on the first book, but on the second work, Find Your Why. And he co-wrote that with David Mead, along with Simon Sinek. And Peter now has branched out from that, and he now has his own content called Jump Seat Leadership. And Peter came along to our event and spoke about it, and he's written a book. So Peter Docker, Jump Seat Leadership. But it's all about how you empower people within your organization, how you put a plan together, and how you cohesively bring those people on that journey, and in how you adhere to that plan. And Peter has some really real life experiences about managing people, but also as well the development of that plan. And we've been working very closely with Peter on that, and we adopt that methodology within our business. So it's not necessarily about technology, it's more around mindset and culture and everything within the business. And I would, I like Peter's content. It's sat very well with us, and it's part of our strategy moving forward as an agency. So we very much are adopting that sort of jump seat leadership sort of approach.
Awesome. I'll be checking that one out. Simon Sinek fan. I think the way he talks is it's very calming, but he always makes some really good points. I'll be checking that for sure. Thank you. So you've been an awesome guest, Graham. I'm sure there's an argument for, I was going to say another, but probably multiple sessions. We went off in a few tangents, so maybe we'll look at doing that in the future. But right now, a cheeky ask, if I can, is there anyone else in the space that you'd recommend we should bring on the show in the future?
Yeah, I do. Good question. I think that the first one has been somebody that I think Robert Norham has suggested you should talk to. But there's a lady by the name of Marta George, and she works for Ping Identity. I'm very fortunate to say she's a client of ours. And they're a great client to Ice Blue Sky. But she has a really good forward vision on account-based marketing and buyer group marketing. And I think to get her on would be very relevant if you're going to continue this theme of buying group marketing. I think the other person I would recommend is Barbara Stewart, and she's an active consultant within the B2B marketing strategy. I don't know whether you've heard Barbara talk before, but
No.
she's very much got some great strong content around the buying journey. So it's about mapping that out. So it cuts across on this as well, buying groups and buying group journey. And the final one, I would say probably our CEO at Ice Blue Sky, Charlotte. She has far more of a depth of marketing than I have. She's been in it for many, many years. And again, I would say she would be a good guest to sort of amplify and emphasize maybe on a few other different degrees of things that I've spoken about today.
Awesome. Appreciate it. And hopefully we'll get those guests on a podcast in the future. So appreciate that. I'm sure a lot of our listeners here, you've opened up lots of cans of worms and there's lots of conversations they'd love to have with you. So how would you recommend, if you're happy to, people get in touch with you after this?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, because you're going to be there as well. And we're exhibiting at the B2B Marketing ABM conference on the 5th of November. So if you're going along to that, we've got a stand. We're going to be talking about buying groups and we're going to talk about curation of content and things like that. So that's what we're going to be talking about. So come along to that. Or you can jump on my LinkedIn, Graham Reed, Ice Blue Sky, or visit our website, because any inquiry that comes through to there comes through to my inbox. So be happy to engage or embellish or amplify or talk about anything we've spoken about further.
That's awesome. Thank you. And I'm sure, look out for the rush. I'm sure people will be contacting you after this. That was a great session, Graham. Thank you very much for your time. As I say, I'm sure we'll be following this up with a subsequent one. I hope the listeners, you've enjoyed this episode as well. And don't forget, there's nearly 600 others in the series. So make sure you check them out. Thanks everyone for listening. Thanks again, Graham, for your time. Until the next time, cheerio.
Thanks, Paul.